just still trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started. I would like to thank you to everyone who has taken time to join this session today for the Minimum Equity Standards 2023-2024 Year-End Report Training. I'm Lindsay Mabry, Communications and Engagement Specialist for the Illinois Shines program with Energy Solutions. We'll go ahead and get started by introducing today's presenters. I'd like to hand it off to Casey.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Welcome, everyone. On today's webinar, we have myself as the strategy team lead presenting, as well as Natalia Gardaki, who is a project manager for Energy Solutions. We also have Audrey Steinbach and Emily Asbury from the Illinois Power Agency on as resources for any questions that come up later in the webinar. Next slide, please. So today's agenda includes a recap of the MES requirements, timeline and deadlines, an overview of the MES year-end report, the process for verifying equity eligible persons, the scoring for year-end reports, the MES waiver, consequences for non-compliance, resources as you prepare for the year-end report, and time for questions. Next slide. So we want to start with a recap of the MES requirements, the timeline, and deadlines.
And Casey, I'll take over from here.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Thanks, Casey. Hi, everybody. My name is Natalia Gardaki, Project Manager for Energy Solutions, and I'm one of the leads for the MES requirements. So we're going to get started with just a recap of what the requirements are, timeline, and deadlines. So Mike, next slide, please. Perfect. So we're going to get started with a quick recap of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. So this, obviously CEJA, we all know, amended the Illinois Power Agency Act and expanded the priority access to the clean energy economy for business and workers from communities that have been excluded from economic opportunities in the energy sector. So CEJA really created the equity accountability system for the Illinois Shines program, and the EAS includes the minimum equity standards, which we are here discussing today. The MES are applicable to all applicants to the agency's Illinois Shines program and competitive procurements. So as a recap, beginning with this current program year, the 2023-24 program year, which started June 1st, at least 10% of the project workforce for each entity that participates in the Illinois Shines program during that given year must be comprised of equity eligible persons. And year to year, this is increasing to at least 30% by 2030. So at least 30% of the project workforce for each entity participating in the program will need to be comprised of EEPs by then. And the EAS also does include the equity eligible contractor category within the program. Next slide, please. So just a recap here of who are equity eligible persons and contractors. The IPA Act defines EEPs as individuals that fall into one of these four eligibility criteria that are listed here on the screen. So the first one is graduates or current or former participants in a number of the eligible job training programs that are listed here on the screen. The second one is persons who are graduates of or currently enrolled in the foster care system, persons who are formerly incarcerated, and then persons whose primary residence is in an equity eligible investment community. And a recap here that an EEC, so an equity eligible contractor, is a business that is majority owned by an equity eligible person. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So the minimum equity standard requires an organization's Illinois Shines project workforce to be made up of 10% EEPs. So we wanted to clarify what really is meant by project workforce here. This information is included in some of the resources on our program website related to the MES, including the FAQs, but we did want to recap that here in this slide deck. So in your organization's project workforce for the minimum equity standard, you should be including your employees, contractors and their employees, and subcontractors and their employees in that total. But please keep in mind that this does not include your designees. So if you are an approved vendor that has, designees registered in the program beneath you, you should not be including those individuals in your total project workforce, since those entities will be reporting their own MES totals separately as a registered program entity. And this really helps us to avoid double counting those EEPs. So in terms of the people that should be included in the totals, anyone with job duties that are directly required by or substantially related to the development, construction, and operation of a project that is participating in or intended to participate, all those people should be included. And this does include workforce and administrative, sales, marketing, and technical roles where those workers' duties are performed in Illinois. Next slide. And here on the screen, we wanted to provide a timeline overview of all of the upcoming deadlines that are coming up related to the MES. You can see that we've color-coded it a bit to hopefully lessen the confusion, but the program year 2023-24 requirements are in that yellowy color, and then 2024-25 requirements are in that blue. So just to summarize here, in mid-April 2024, we will be opening the MES compliance plan for the following program year for submissions. So keep an eye out on that. We will be, sending around a big program announcement once that is open for the next year's compliance plan. And then May 1st, 2024 is when we will open up the MES year-end report for the current program year for submissions. May 31st, 2024 marks the conclusion of the current program year that we are in right now. So just keep that date in mind. And then June 3rd, 2024 is when next year's MES compliance plan is due. So the following program year, 2024-2025 MES compliance plan due on June 3rd, 2024. And then July 15th, 2024 is when this current year's end of year report or year-end report is due. And July 15th is also the last kind of day that you can submit an MES waiver request for the current program year if you decide to do that. Next slide. So just to recap here of what the MES compliance plan entailed. So by June 1st of 2023, all non-equity eligible contractor approved vendors and designees were required to submit an MES compliance plan. So you might recall that you did have to do that. And the MES compliance plans really provided us, the program administrator, with an outline of how the approved vendor or designee planned to achieve the MES for the current program year. So the compliance plans really showed how you planned to meet that 10% MES goal for the projects that you submitted to Illinois Shines during the current program year. For entities that applied to be an approved vendor or designee during this program year, the compliance plans were required at the time of that entity's initial application to the program. Next slide. So in the next section here, we will be getting into an overview of the MES year-end report, which is what, the focus of this webinar. So the MES year-end report is intended for participating organizations to document their compliance with the minimum equity standard. So we have listed here on the screen the required data and information that you should be including in this year-end report. So it starts off with some really basic AV designee information, asks for totals of your project workforce and your for that workforce, the demographic information for those individuals. We ask for the total number of EEPs in your workforce, which includes proof of EEP eligibility and any supporting documentation for those EEPs. We will get into that a little bit later in the slide deck. We also require you to provide a description of your outreach efforts that your organization employed to recruit EEPs, job training program graduate hiring data, and Illinois-based workforce diversity data, and then some other data that was previously collected during the approved vendor annual report. And I'll describe that a little bit more in detail once we do like a demo of the form. But just to remind everybody here, achieving compliance with the MES for the program year 2023-24 means that at least 10% of an approved vendor or designee's Illinois-based project workforce is comprised of EEPs. So make sure to keep that in mind when you are putting together your year-end report. Next slide. So the MES requirements apply to entities that are participating in the Illinois Shines program in a given program year. So on this slide, we really wanted to clarify what is meant by program participation and how that is defined by the program. So for the purposes of the MES, participation in the program includes submitting projects to Illinois Shines, performing construction on any project intended on being submitted to Illinois Shines, conducting any sales or marketing activity for projects that have been or will be submitted to the program, maintaining subscriptions for a community solar project that holds a REC contract, and this does include projects that were approved prior to the passage of CEJA, maintaining a project on a wait list, and then otherwise conducting business on a project seeking or that holds a REC contract. Next slide. So how does the MES year-end report differ from the initial MES compliance plan? This was information that was provided in that program announcement that went out, I think, last week. And we just wanted to bring that up again, since this is a big point of clarification. These two submission periods will be overlapping a bit, so we want to be clear on how these two reports differ. So the MES year-end report for the current program year is due on July 15th, 2024. And it's really intended for your organization to document how you implemented and achieved compliance with the MES over the program year. And so for this year, for 2023-24, the MES requirement is 10%, so showing how you reached that 10%. And so the data required in this report is actual project workforce totals, actual project workforce demographic information, and actual numbers of EEPs in your project workforce, and then a description of the outreach efforts that you've employed to recruit those EEPs, and a couple other data points there. And a recap of who needs to submit this report. It's all approved vendors, designees, and nested designees who participated in the Illinois Shines program during this current program year. EECs are exempt from the MES requirement, but will need to provide other data. So there is some annual report data in the MES year-end report this year that we will be asking EECs to provide, but more information to come there. And then on the flip side, the MES compliance plan for next program year is due June 3rd, 2024. The compliance plan is intended for your organization to show how you plan to achieve the MES for the upcoming program year. So it's a forward-looking document with your intended plan for the year. And you'll explain your organization's plan to conduct outreach and hire EEPs to reach the 10% MES for the 24-25 program year. And so the data required in the MES compliance plan in that case is estimates. We know that you will not have, concrete information at that time because it's, due at the very beginning of a program year. So you'll be providing estimated project workforce totals, estimated project workforce demographic information, and then an estimate of the number of equity eligible persons currently in your project workforce, and then the number of EEPs that you want to hire over the program year to achieve compliance. And all approved vendors, designees, and nested designees who intend to participate in the Illinois Shines program during the next program year, so the 2024-25 program year, are required to submit an MES compliance plan. Next slide. So the submission process for the MES year-end report, it will be submitted via a Microsoft form, which is, consistent with the MES compliance plan that was due in June and the MES mid-year report that was due in December. And so we're keeping the format the same. It will be via a Microsoft form, and we will be sharing the Microsoft form widely via program update emails once it's opened. And we'll post it to the program website and to the portal so that you can find it in multiple places. And then the submission window for the year-end report will open on May 1st, 2024, and all year-end reports will be due by July 15th, 2024. And I do want to call out here on this slide, we have set up a new email address specifically for MES related questions and issues. So feel free to jot that down. It is mes@illinoisshines.com. So any supplemental documentation for the year-end report can be sent via email to that email address, as well as any questions that might come up while you're preparing for the report. Next slide. Okay, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen share really quick, if you don't mind. And we're going to go through a quick demo of the form template that we've published, so that everybody's aware of everything that's included in the form. So can someone confirm that you're seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect, thank you. Great. So this template was released again, I think last week in a big program announcement that went out to everybody on our emailing list. And it includes all of the information that will be collected in the MES year-end report. So there's a red call out here at the top that I want to bring your attention to. And that's that this template is not to be used to submit the year-end report. This is simply just a template to take a look at what information is needed. We will be releasing that Microsoft form on May 1st for submissions, so keep an eye out for that. So just to go through the form, this top is just kind of a description of what's needed. So I'll skip over that. And the actual bulk of the form starts here with just some basic approved vendor information, your company name, your ID number in the program, and then some information on the person completing the form so that we know who to reach out to for any questions that might come up. And then this question here really triggers the rest of the form. So this is getting at whether your organization did participate in the program during the program year from June 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2024. So if you answer no to this question, that you did not, fall into any of these categories of program participation, you will not need to complete the rest of the form. So your submission will end there. But if you select yes, you will continue filling out the rest of the form because you did participate in the program and the information is required. So we'll start off with the total number of employees and workers on your Illinois Shines projects during the 2023-24 program year. So again, I already provided that definition of the project workforce, but it's here for reference in the form. So make sure to include all of those, people. And then the next section goes into workforce demographics, where you will be asked to provide the total number of individuals in your total Illinois project workforce that belong to each of the following demographic groups. And it goes, we split it out by gender and race. And just a call out here to please make sure that the totals provided in this section total up to the number provided for your total project workforce. So for example, if you reported 10 individuals in your total project workforce, we want to make sure that, gender would add up to 10 and then race would add up to 10. If not, we might be reaching out for additional information because we don't have, complete info for your organization. And then the next section goes into equity eligible persons. So we ask for the total number of EEPs in your Illinois project workforce for the 2023-24 program year. A recap of the definition of an EEP is here for reference as you're filling out the form. And then if available, this is an optional question, but we ask that if you have this information, you do provide it. We are asking for the total number of EEPs in your project workforce that belong to the following employment classifications. So full-time, part-time, temporary, and independent contractors. And then next question asks you to provide the full names of individuals in your project workforce who have registered as EEPs in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal. And I'll go into this a little bit in the next couple slides. And then for anybody who is not registered in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal, you would provide the full names of those individuals in the next question. And then there are directions below for how to ensure proper certification of those individuals as EEPs. And I'll recap that in a second once we get to the slides again. And then the following section goes over equity eligible contractor partnerships and outreach. So asking whether your organization partnered with EECs for project applications. If yes, we ask you to identify them. And then we'll have a long form question here asking you to, describe any of your outreach that you did to increase the utilization of EEPs. And we also ask you to kind of reflect any major differences from your initial minimum equity standard compliance plan. So if your, outreach methods change drastically between the two, we want to know that. And then there's a question towards the end that asks whether your company is an approved vendor, designee, or both. And if your company, if your organization chooses approved vendor or both here, it will trigger the following couple sections that were taken from the annual report for the Illinois Shines program and put into the MES year-end report, just because it was a natural fit for this information. But if you select approved vendor or both, you'll be asked to provide information on job training, graduate hiring for the development of Illinois Shines projects. And this section is split up into direct data and indirect data. Indirect data means hiring and employment by the company submitting this report, so staff on your company's payroll. So here you will provide that information. It splits it out by the different training programs. We ask for the number of full-time, part-time people. Just gonna breeze through this to take a look. And then for the job training hiring, you will also be asked to provide a narrative response here. So including, efforts taken to recruit and hire trainees of these programs. And again, this section's for direct data, so people on your company's payroll. And then you'll be asked if you have indirect data to report, which is hiring and employment conducted by the company's subcontractors that are not registered as an approved vendor, designee, or nested designee in the program. So same information here, all about the various training programs, the individuals on your staff there. And then a narrative, same as above. And then finally, the last two sections are asking for information on Illinois-based workforce diversity, also split out into direct data and indirect data. So you'll be asked to provide the number of individuals across these categories here. Just going to breeze through this as well. And then another narrative section for you to describe your activities to, hire people across these different categories. And then again, the same exact section for indirect data. And that's, again, indirect data means hiring and employment conducted by the company's subcontractors that are not registered as an approved vendor, designee, or nested designee in the program. And then I do want to call out that there are a couple questions here at the very end of the form that ask you to provide the number of employees who are graduates of or currently enrolled in the foster care system, number of employees formerly incarcerated, and then the final question is residential zip codes of all employees. And we ask for direct data only here. So again, that's staff on your company's payroll. So you have the option to, copy paste zip codes into this. It'll be a long form question in Microsoft Forms, so you can copy and paste there if that's easy for you. But if preferred, you can also email a list into the MES email, or send in an Excel spreadsheet or something, and we'll take care of that way. So keep in mind that is an option there as well. Great. Mike, I'm going to stop my share, and if you could bring up the slides again, that'd be great. Great. Next slide. Awesome. So there is a new Microsoft Form capability that allows us to allow respondents to our forms to download and save their responses. So this will be an option for the MES year-end report. You'll be able to save your response in Microsoft Forms, or you can go in and print your responses as a PDF. So we're hoping that's a helpful, new feature that will minimize some back and forth with the program admin. So just wanted to bring awareness to that. Next slide. All right, so the next couple slides, I'm going to get into the process for verifying EEPs. So the MES year-end report requires participating approved vendors and designees to verify their EEPs. So in the report, you will be required to provide the full names of individuals in your project workforce who qualify as EEPs. So you saw those questions in the form demo, but this can be done in one of two ways. One of them is to have all of your EEPs register in IPA's Energy Workforce Equity Portal. And then the second option is by collecting signed EEP attestations and providing documentation for those people's EEP qualifications and submitting that to the program admin via email. So either one of those options work, and I'll get into them a little bit more on the next couple slides. But the program administrator will be verifying EEP qualifications as part of our review process for the MES year-end report. So keep in mind that we do require this information. So any submissions without these, the EEP information will be asked to, provide that and go into need info. Next slide. So I mentioned on the previous screen that an option to verifying your EEPs is to have them register in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal. This portal was created by IPA and launched on January 31st, 2023. And it's a very useful tool in multiple ways. Job seekers can use the portal to see if they qualify as an EEP. They can register themselves as an EEP in the system. And they can also view clean energy job postings for EEPs. And then clean energy project developers on the flip side can advertise any clean energy jobs and look for EEPs that are seeking employment. So there are those options for, job seekers and clean energy project developers, but it is also a way for individuals who are currently employed at a clean energy company to certify themselves as an equity eligible person for the purpose of MES. So while it is not a requirement to have EEPs registered in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal, it might provide an easier route to compliance with the MES. So please keep that in mind. On the right side of the screen, I do have a screenshot here of the homepage of the Energy Workforce Equity Portal. And that yellow, header there is where you should be sending your EEPs. It says, if you are currently employed at a clean energy company and are looking to become certified as an EEP, please click here. So those people would go there, click that link, and it would take them to that EEP application. And once registering in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal and providing any necessary documentation, an EEP will receive an email from the IPA confirming their status within 5 business days. So pretty quick turnaround on that registration process. And the URL for the portal is energyequity.illinois.gov. Next slide. These screenshots really just show the process for EEP certification in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal. So you'll see that we will require some basic contact information for the individual, their email address, telephone, city, the basis for their equity eligible person status. So they'll check mark which one they fall into there. It also asks about NABCEP certification, qualified person, and union membership. And then they'll have the opportunity to upload proof of their EEP status. And yeah, so that's really what the form looks like. It's pretty quick. Next slide. So if your organization's EEPs are not registered in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal, your organization will be required to collect signed EEP attestations and to provide documentation for those individuals' EEP qualifications to submit to the program admin. So again, this is option 2. If you have individuals who are not registered in the Energy Workforce Equity Portal, you would need to collect this information and send it into the program admin as, the approved vendor or designate. Keep in mind that the EEP attestation is currently under development and we are working on it. And additional guidance will be coming out once we have that ready. And I do want to call out on the right side of the screen, supplemental documentation is required for EEPs who qualify based on graduation from a participating workforce training program or whose primary residence is located in an equity investment eligible community. We've laid out the acceptable documentation here below. So for EEPs who qualify based on graduation or current participation in a qualifying workforce training program, we would need to see either an acceptance letter from the training provider for current participants or a certificate of completion from the training provider for graduates of those programs. And then for EEPs who qualify based on primary residence, we would need to see something with the individual's name and primary residence address on it. So something like a driver's license, a utility bill, a lease, mortgage agreement, or something else that allows us to verify the individual's eligibility. Next slide. All right, and I think here I will pass it over to Casey to take over the back half of the presentation.
Great. Thanks so much, Natalia. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in terms of the year-end report assessments, they will be reviewed and assigned one of the following status determinations. 1, compliant, which means the entity has met the applicable MES requirement within their Illinois Shines project workforce. 2, non-compliant, which means the entity has either not met the 10% MES requirement within their project workforce, did not submit an MES waiver request, or was denied an MES waiver. 3, waiver granted, which means the entity submitted a request for an MES waiver that was granted by the Illinois Power Agency. And number 4, need info. or an incomplete submission. And this is when the year-end report submission is incomplete and the entity is required to provide additional missing supplemental documentation. Next slide. And then in terms of the MES waiver request process, we wanted to provide some information in this regard. All AVs should be working to make progress and achieve compliance with the MES. But in the case where, despite significant efforts, your organization determines that prior to June 1st, 2024, it will not be able to achieve the 10% MES goal for program year 2023-24, your organization is encouraged to request a waiver. The program administrator will accept waiver requests on a rolling basis until July 15th, 2024 for this program year. Waiver requests are evaluated against a scoring system, and a minimum of 20 points is needed to grant a waiver. Next slide. In terms of waiver requirements, we wanted to provide some visibility here. The agency will grant waivers in rare circumstances where the applicant provides evidence of significant due diligence toward meeting the MES. Per the long-term plan, waiver requests will include a brief narrative describing the entity's effort to recruit EEPs prior to the start of project development, including utilization of the Energy Equity Workforce Database developed by the agency, as well as the following: working consistently and assertively with approved state job training and workforce development programs to recruit a diverse workforce and provide evidence of outreach. Maintaining applications of individuals not selected for an opening for contact regarding future project openings, participating in job fairs and related local community events to recruit a diverse workforce. The waivers should also include evidence of efforts to hire or contract with EECs, such as communications with affiliated community-based organizations and or training program facilities. State workforce hubs, union hall registers, professional development associations are also included in this category. This should include the date of contact, the agency official, and title of the individual contacted. And you can obtain the final waiver at the link shown in this slide. Next slide. The waiver requirements also include efforts to proactively establish contracting relationships with equity eligible contractors, advertising or formal solicitation using various platforms of targeted social media, engagement in direct and extensive outreach to appropriately targeted associations or other relevant organizations to notify them of the project opportunity, and evidence that the entity posted all solicitations on appropriate state agency websites, include direct targeted email alerts to appropriate respondents who have registered with state agencies to learn of opportunities. Once you've completed your waiver, they should be sent to either the mes@illinoisshines.com email address or admin@illinoisshines.com. Next slide. A program participant can appeal any and all decisions made by the program administrator to the IPA, while the program administrator is an extension of the agency and works in lockstep with it. The agency offers this route to program participants as a matter of course. So we're providing this information in the case where a waiver is denied by the IPA, and this would be the appeal process that you would follow. Next slide. There are some consequences for noncompliance to the MES. If we go to the next slide. It may lead to disciplinary consequences, including but not limited to notice of potential violation, suspension of the entity's ability to submit project applications to IPA programs during the remainder of the delivery year, and violations could potentially result in the AV or designee becoming suspended from the IPA's programs for an entire delivery year. Next slide. We wanted to provide a list of resources, so if we can go to the next slide, please. The first and foremost place to go is the program website's Equity Accountability System webpage, which offers a suite of resources for approved vendors and designees in meeting the MES, including a guide to the Equity Accountability System, MES compliance plan forms and samples, MES waiver request, the MES mid-year report submission form, and the MES year-end report draft template. So you have a draft or a template of what a year-end report looks like. There are also FAQs related to the MES, and those were last updated in October of 2023. We also offer weekly office hours each Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, which allow individual stakeholders to conference with the teams, sector strategists, and other subject matter experts. Zoom links can be found in the program's weekly announcements. And we also have and offer one-on-one support with sector strategists, so that's available to you as well. Next slide. And we just wanted to provide the emails for each of the sectors in case you wanted to avail yourself of those one-on-one resources. General and ongoing technical support can always be accessed at admin@illinoisshines.com. And of course, again, any questions related to the MES compliance can be directed to mes@illinoisshines.com. Next slide. And now we want to be able to pause for questions. I'm going to hand it back to Lindsay, who I know has been tracking that inbox or that Q&A chat.
Yes, thank you to everyone that has submitted questions through the Q&A. If you have not yet submitted a question but would like to, please write your question in the Q&A box and we will try to get to as many as we can here. Just a note, we will publish answers to questions that are asked today. And if we're not able to get to yours, please be on the lookout for an answer in the published Q&A. So if you give me a minute, I'm gonna see what we have here. Okay, it does look like there's a couple coming in. And I just want to see, some of these may have already been answered as we do have a number of ones that were. But this first one here, will the work done for projects that are still on the wait list count for the MES compliance? Is there anyone from the agency or the program team that would like to take this one? Or we can answer it in the follow-up items.
I can take this one, Lindsay.
Thank you, Audrey.
Just double checking something really quickly. Yes, maintaining a project on the wait list does qualify as participating in the program this year. I think that might have been on a previous slide.
Yeah, it's in the slides.
Okay, great. Cool.
Thank you. Just reading through some other ones.
I can answer the one from Nathan related to the equity investment eligible communities map.
Okay, so the question is just for everyone, are there any chances or changes to the equity investment eligible community map since the initial submission last year?
So there has been an update to that map, but the IPA is utilizing both the old version of the map as well as the updated version of the map to make sure that no EEPs that were previously qualifying lost their qualification with that new map update.
Thank you, Audrey. Here is one. When will the new year site open for the 2024-2025 submission due on June 3rd?
I think if we could go back to the timeline slide, that might be helpful, and that answers this one pretty easily.
Thank you, Audrey.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the submission that's due on June 3rd is the compliance plan for the 2024-25 program year. And that will be opening up in April. So keep going back a little bit. Right there. Perfect. So hopefully that helps answer that.
Thank you. And I'm seeing a few questions here regarding of individuals that live outside of Illinois, but they do travel to project sites. So I'm just seeing if I can clump those together in a singular item. Emily, I see you went off mute.
Yeah, sure thing. This is one I see this question is coming up time and time again. So what we're going to do is take a look at all of these questions related to like Illinois-based workforce and try to provide some clarification in the FAQ. I see this is causing a lot of confusion, so this is definitely something that we need to clarify. So keep your eyes out for the resources posted after this webinar when we post some of those FAQs. I think we're going to want to take a look at all of these questions and see how we can clarify to make it a little more clear for everyone.
Thank you, Emily. And just a reminder, if you do have a question, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A, and we will providing answers and follow-up documents after the webinar today. And thank you for all of the questions. We've had a very interactive group today, and we appreciate the questions coming in. And then also just a reminder, we do have weekly office hours on Wednesdays. The information is within the program announcements that typically go out Friday. And then also you can find all of the announcements under the program documents section at the program website. Okay, looks like we have some being answered and more questions regarding being in Illinois and not. So based on Emily's information, we do have more information coming out regarding those. Here is one question. Are we required to comply with MES even though we do not have any new projects?
So if we can go to the slide that talks about participation and the definition of participation, that'd be helpful. I'm not sure what slide it is. Sorry about that. There are specific outlines of what participation in the program year means for MES compliance. So if any entity, approved vendor, or designee has done any of these items that are listed here on the slide, this is considered participation in this program year, which means the MES does apply to you and you must comply with it.
Thank you, Audrey. And just to remind attendees, we are just taking questions via the question and answer feature throughout the webinar. So we will not be asking for attendees to speak during the webinar. So please put any questions you have within the questions and answer feature. Okay, it looks like most of the questions are getting answered. just looking through some new ones that we have coming in.
I can answer the latest one from 1246 on
Okay.
the different waivers across the state, if you want to read that one out.
Yes, thank you, Audrey. So the question is, given the discrepancy in the number of EEPs looking for work in different areas of the state, is there any plan to have waiver request forms that are unique to different areas of the state? For example, we are in a very small town in central Illinois, and despite our efforts, it is much harder for us to find EEPs because it will require people to move. So pass it off to you, Audrey. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. So the waivers that we have two waivers. We have one union specific waiver and one non-union specific waiver. Those waivers were drafted and published last year, and we got stakeholder feedback on those waivers last year. So those waivers are final for this program year, and they are not planning to be adjusted. So if you are working on a waiver and are struggling to be able to answer any of the questions there, please reach out to the MES@illinoisshines.com email, and we can work to support you through that. But the waivers are finalized for this year.
Thank you, Audrey. We'll provide a few more minutes, but I'll ask the agency if there's any other questions they'd like to answer at this time, or if they'd like to address post-webinar with the other questions we've received, which are many questions. So thank you.
I think we've addressed all, sorry,
Okay.
Lindsay. I think we've addressed all of the more general questions. One thing I do want to continue to harp on is reaching out to us if you have specific situations or specific questions on how does my firm comply with this. We know this is a new requirement. We want to make sure that everyone has the support they need and the clarity that they need. And we're working through this for the first time with you all. So we definitely appreciate your patience in working on clarifying these items. And do please reach out to us if you have specific questions for your firm, because I know every company is a little bit different. Some are very small, some are very large. Everyone's located in a different place. So we really want to make sure that we get everyone across the finish line and can support everyone on this, as it is a program requirement for everyone.
Thank you, Audrey. And also, as Mike's going through here, just remember the different resources, and this presentation will be posted on our website, both the recording and the slides, and then we will have a few other materials after this webinar that will be posted later this week regarding the MES 2020, the year-end report. And then also we have on the screen the different sector strategists that are available, and then even the new email address for MES specific questions, and that is MES@illinoisshines.com. So I think if the agency and the team is okay, would you like to move on or still answer the different questions that may be coming in? And like I said, if we don't answer your question on the webinar now, it will be addressed within the post-webinar materials.
I think we're all set to move on, Lindsay.
Great, thank you. Mike, if you could move on, thank you. Again, I'd like to thank all of the program participants for attending today's session. We appreciate you taking time to learn more about this process. And as we've noted, we are here to support you. I would also like to thank today's speakers from the Illinois Power Agency and from Energy Solutions, the Illinois Shines Program Administrator. Before we conclude, does the team or the agency have any final comments?
I'd just like to reiterate what's already been said. Please feel free to reach out with more questions. We know this is the first complete program year with these MES requirements, so there are going to be a lot of questions, a lot of clarifications needed. So please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know where extra help is needed. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, Emily. And again, thank you all. In a recording of today's presentation, copy of the presentation slides and Q&A will be posted to the program website as soon as possible. Wish you all a great day.